In this Diablo 4 video, I'm going to be showing you my Vortex Barbarian build, which is an endgame level 50 plus Barbarian build aimed at World Tiers 3, and is an upgrade of our Whirlwind Barbarian that we showcased earlier. This build takes from where the beginner Whirlwind Barbarian left and uses the additional skill points to boost your damage output, fury generation, HP regeneration, and overall speed. You'll also be adding charge for an additional unstoppable alternative, and swapping the weapon expertise and technique. You won't be changing any other regular active skills, and just focus on passive skills to further increase our efficiency, trying to achieve almost 100% uptime with Whirlwind. This build combines many different mechanics into one to create the ultimate Whirlwind Barbarian build. The idea is to use your shouts to boost your fury generation, increase your damage, and set up berserking. Once these effects are active, you'll start using Whirlwind, which will apply vulnerable, bleeding, and slow into enemies. Many effects on this build are triggered by lucky hit chance, which is increased by the polearm weapon expertise. As you progress towards level 50, there are three main aspects that you want to resolve regarding your build. These are fury generation, damage output, and survivability. Enemies will become much stronger at tier 3, but with their correct skills and legendary aspects, I was able to finish the Cathedral Light dungeon at level 46, and even after that I was able to clear Nightmare Sigil dungeons 4 or 5 levels above me without issues. For starters, using our Whirlwind will constantly apply vulnerable thanks to pressure point lucky hits, and bleeding thanks to Furious Whirlwind. The hamstring passive will add slow to your bleeding effects, which marks them as crowd controlled, adding even more equipment options, and the cut to the bone passive will increase bleeding effects on vulnerable enemies. Finally, the No Mercy passive will increase critical strike chance against slowed enemies, while the heavy-handed passive will increase our critical strike damage while using two-handed weapons. Monsters hit much harder as you progress towards higher levels. The Imposing Presence passive increases your health by a massive 15% when maxed out. This works great in combination with the Raid Leader passive, which heals 3% of your maximum life per second, and the Invigorating Fury passive, which heals you for 9% of maximum life per 100 fury spent, allowing you to stay at maximum health most of the time. Swiftness gives you a flat 15% speed increase, making it a great option to both escape and engage enemies faster. When it comes to your expertise, you want to use polearm expertise to increase your lucky hit chance by 10% and your damage by 10% while you are healthy, which is most of the time. For your technique, you'll want to take the one-handed weapon technique, which provides a lucky hit chance to generate 5 fury when hitting a crowd-controlled enemy. These expertises synergize perfectly with our build, as we'll be getting increased lucky hit chance. While skills provide a lot of value on their own, it's legendary aspects which really make the difference when it comes to polishing this build. The Barbarian has 12 equipment slots, and it's easy to get overwhelmed on what you should keep or replace while leveling up, as you'll be constantly updating your gear. The best way to overcome this is by using the build and getting a feeling for what you're lacking. If you're running out of fury very fast, then focus on first getting aspects that boost fury generation, like the aspect of Echoing Fury. If you find yourself dying too often, then go for Iron Blood aspect, and so on. As previously stated, you'll be constantly updating your gear as you increase in level. If you only rely on legendary extraction, you'll find yourself out of options very fast, and some aspects are very important to keep the build going. For this reason, I strongly recommend that you clear the dungeons associated to the following legendaries to unlock their Codex of Power, which will grant you a reliable way to imprint them while leveling up. For resource aspects, you want Aspect of the Umbral and Aspect of Echoing Fury. Aspect of the Umbral is perfect for generating Fury, and Aspect of Echoing Fury makes that you gain Fury every second while your shouts are active. For utility, you want Aspect of Anemia. This has a lucky hit chance to stun bleeding enemies for 2 seconds, which works great against elites. For mobility, you want Windstalker aspect. This increases your movement speed after a critical strike. For offensive, you want Aspect of the Dire Whirlwind. This is a key part of this build and should be slotted into one of your two-handed weapons. If you don't have it, try to get it as soon as possible. Aspect of Berserk Ripping. This greatly increases your bleeding while berserking. You should use it on a two-handed weapon before you get the accelerating aspect. And then defensively, we have Aspect of Disobedience. This legendary aspect works well with Whirlwind, allowing you to stack up a lot of armor very fast. This should be one of the first priorities while completing your Codex of Power. Aspect of the Protector. This gives you a barrier when you're damaged an elite. This barrier is amazing and a must-have for this build. And lastly, Iron Blood aspect. This is great to deal with a big pack of enemies, providing damage reduction in proportion to the amount of bleeding enemies that are near you. The following cannot be obtained by completing dungeons and can only be extracted from legendary equipment that you find during your playthrough and then imprinted onto your own equipment. Don't hesitate to use them, as you'll keep finding them as you play. Bold Chieftain's aspect. This is by far the best legendary aspect for this build, as it allows you to maintain almost 100% shout time, meaning that your fury generation will always be at max. The build still works without this, but you should definitely add it as soon as you find it. Aspect of Grasping Whirlwind. This is one of the best aspects for this build, allowing you to hit everything at the same greatly increased efficiency. If you get this, you get rid of Aspect of the Ancestral Echoes and Dust Devil's aspect. Aspect of Burning Rage. This will constantly cast a fire AoE around you while berserking, which synergizes greatly with Whirlwind. This aspect has fixed damage, so if you get it early, you'll want to renew it later on to keep it up with its damage. Dust Devil's Aspect. This aspect summons dust whirlwinds that move randomly and deal periodic AoE damage. This aspect also has fixed damage, so if you got it early on, you'll want to renew it later on to keep its damage high. Aspect of Limitless Rage. While not amazing early on, this aspect will become better and better as you progress further into the game, as you will generate more fury than you can spend. Skullbreaker's Aspect. This aspect is also amazing when combined with Aspect of Berserk Ripping. The Gore's Devastating Unique Gloves. If you're lucky enough to find these gloves are incredible for this build. The unique effect will create an explosion that decimates everything around you when you finish your Whirlwind, and they provide everything we want for this build: Whirlwind rank, lucky hit chance, fury generation, and attack speed. And lastly, Aspect of Berserk Fury. This is not really necessary as you already have Aspect of Echoing Fury, but if you're still having issues with Fury, it'll solve that problem for you. The amount of damage you deal is strictly related to your equipment, as it proportionally increases your damage. Thanks to the bleeding and slow status effects, you'll be able to stack up more affixes than other builds, so use this to your advantage. When comparing an item, try to calculate the combined percentage of damage increase you'll get from all affixes, instead of just looking into the damage of the weapon. You want to look for the following affixes depending on what you're lacking. You can see these on the screen. I'm not going to go all through these, but obviously they focus on resources, damage, and defense. For gems, you'll either want to use emeralds or sapphires. On your armor, you want to use rubies to boost your maximum life, and for jewelry, try and compensate for any resistance you're lacking, or if you feel strong enough, just use skulls to further boost your armor. When you reach level 50, you'll unlock your first Paragon board, and you'll start earning Paragon points. On the first board, you should first focus on the right part to get the Brawn Rare node, which further increases your damage and gives you maximum life. From there, continue up and get the socket and the 2 other rare nodes. If you happen to find it, you should slot the Wrath Glyph into the socket, providing more critical strike damage, and try to allocate at least 25 dexterity around it. This will activate the additional bonus, providing fury when you critically strike. Try to get as many strength nodes as possible, but also make sure to fulfill the socketed glyph requirements in its radius in order to acquire the additional bonuses. Once you reach the top, you'll have to decide what Paragon board to go for, and I recommend the Carnage board, as its legendary node will further enhance your berserking bonuses. Final tips. Unlike Warcry and Rowling Cry, casting Wrath of the Berserker will interrupt your Whirlwind. To make the most of it, cast it and then perform a single lunging strike into an enemy. This will set the berserking timer to 10 seconds and you won't have to restart it. After you do that, you'll be able to use Whirlwind without interruptions. When fighting bosses, try to quickly move in circles while passing through them. This will allow you to avoid most of their attacks. Make sure to cast your shouts when many enemies are present, as this will greatly reduce their cooldown, thanks to the Bold Chieftain's aspect. You can also use equipment with cooldown reduction affixes to compensate for this if you don't have the aspect yet. You'll want to level up one-handed sword expertise to max. To achieve this, simply equip a one-handed sword and swap your Whirlwind arsenal skill to dual wield. Now head into the battlefield and play as you would usually, and play until you max out this expertise. While the Codex of Power is very reliable, it will always imprint the lowest version of the legendary aspect. Make sure to check the legendary drops you find, as these might be the same as the ones you're using but with better rolls. And lastly, Rowling Cry has a short cooldown, so don't hesitate to use it to increase movement speed while exploring dungeons. You can also use Charge as a little rush forward at a great speed, allowing you to save precious time. So that wraps up our Vortex Barbarian build. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and you can see how devastating this build is at endgame. Be sure to stay tuned for more level 50 plus builds as we keep pumping out the Diablo 4 content.